Project to Africa show with our brother Tendai in the show, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about the topic we're covering. My first question to you would be, Zimbabwe has seen a crisis that was covered by world media. Currently there is a power sharing government. What can you tell us about how are things going on right now in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, I think that it is very important to understand the challenges that Zimbabwe faced in the last decade, since 2000. But I think that with the coming in of an inclusive government, quite a number of things have improved. There is an improvement on the economic front. I mean, I'm sure you're alive to the fact that in 2008 we didn't even have food in the shops, we didn't have fuel and everything else. But thanks to the global political agreement, we were able to get basic commodities in the shops. So from the economic front, there's an improvement.
So life is improving now. President Mugabe has been heavily vilified by Western media, right? CNN, BBC, and stuff like that. Now, knowing the history of those countries in Zimbabwe and globally in Africa, do you think the African public should trust what the Western media is saying about Mugabe? Taking into account the history in Africa and the current agenda.
I think that we need to understand that the Western media has its own editorial policy on Africa and in Africa, and I think that it serves no purpose for President Mugabe to get a lot of stick. I think the important thing is for the Western media to understand where he's coming from and where he thinks the country is supposed to move towards. And I think that's very critical.
Yeah. Do you have any feeling that the United Kingdom is trying to preserve its slavery and colonial gains in Zimbabwe when they made it in Zimbabwe? Do you have any feeling that they're trying to preserve any of the gains of the slavery and colonialism and gains of oppression? You think they're trying to preserve those gains? Because we agree that they have acquired a lot of wealth and gains and privilege in Zimbabwe, right? During that time of oppression, do you think right now, with the meddling, are they trying to preserve any of the slavery and colonial gain?
I don't think it's a question of slavery gains, because I think slavery was abolished some 50, 60 years ago. I think that it's a matter of foreign policy of the British government. And I think that there should be interface between their policy and what's happening in Zimbabwe and the progress that we're trying to make as a country. So I think that it's not so much to do with slavery.
So you agree that Britain has interest in Zimbabwe?
Well, that's why they have a mission anyway.
I mean, they have interest in Zimbabwe, right?
I think so.
They have acquired a lot of wealth and a lot of privilege and a lot of supremacy over the local people during the time they oppressed that part of Africa. You agree with me? They have acquired. There is no doubt about that, right?
Yeah.
Are they trying to preserve what they have acquired, in your opinion, yes or no? Because we should look at things objectively, right? If you have a history of hurting people, because what happened in Zimbabwe was, there was a 14 protracted year war that took long, and that was for freedom. That means they didn't want to give up oppression that easily. And in your opinion, is Britain trying to preserve its gains, its oppression gains, yes or no? Or you can give the answer the way you want.
I think it's a very difficult question to respond to, because
objectively, because you should not, because you should not look at it from a perspective where of friendship or whatever. You must look at it from an objective perspective. Are they trying to preserve their gains, yes or no, or whatever you want to say?
I think that's it will be difficult for me to say
to answer that.
I think it will require the spokesperson of the British government to be able to say.
But your own observation, based on your own observation, are they trying to preserve the gains?
Obviously, domination.
They try to preserve
was part of the colonial regime, colonial machinery. So I think that it could be that they want to
preserve the gains.
Their gains.
And we all know that the gains have been racist gains, right, over us. Now, if any African that is informed that these people are trying to preserve, should I close the door?
Yeah.
I was saying, any African who's informed that Britain is trying to preserve its oppression gains, right, colonialism and slavery gains, do you think an African person who has that information would support Britain policy in Africa? Do you think any conscious person will be supporting Britain policy in Zimbabwe precisely if he knows that they're trying to preserve their oppression gains?
No, I think that for Africa it is important to understand that we have done away with the colonial project.
Sorry? We
are done with the colonial project, and we have to move on as Africa and begin to say what gains are we consolidating from.
Based on your own observation, are they trying to preserve the gains?
Obviously, domination.
They try to preserve
was part of the colonial regime, colonial machinery. So I think that it could be that they want to
preserve the gains.
Their gains.
And we all know that the gains have been racist gains, right, over us. Now, but you say that they certainly are trying to preserve the gains of oppression, right? What they have acquired during oppression, the privilege, the wealth during oppression. We agree with me on that one. So how can we ignore when people are still trying to preserve injustice? Because everything they have acquired during oppression was unjust, was racist, was criminal. So if they are trying to preserve it again, how can we ignore it and move on? Because it means you moving on a wrong path, because they're gonna hurt you.